Chapter number 1, The Early Years. 9 July 1879, Pune. Sir Richard Temple had a fairly long innings as a civil servant in British India. Few contemporaries could boast of the kind of knowledge he possessed about the country and its public opinion, especially about the British Empire. During his Indian term from 1847 to 1880, Sir Temple had held several important positions in Punjab, Central Provinces, Bengal, and the crowning glory of this stellar career was his appointment as the Governor of Bombay from 1877 to 1880. With this vast experience behind him, a troubled Sir Temple wrote 2 confidential letters to the Viceroy Lord Lytton. Given the many spelling and grammatical errors in these letters, it is obvious that Sir Temple had penned them in considerable haste. He had reason to worry, since there was serious trouble on the hand. As recently as 1875, there had been several agrarian riots in the districts of Ahmednagar, Pune, Satara, and Sholapur in the Bombay Presidency. In 1876-77, the Deccan had suffered an acutely miserable famine and epidemics of cholera, plague, and smallpox. These had led to a commission of inquiry and eventually to the Deccan Agriculturist Relief Act of 1879. The act sought to protect farmers against arrest for their inability to repay their debts. But it was too late, too little. The discontent had already gained ground across Deccan. Vasudev Balwant Fatke, whom Sir Temple had dismissed as a petty Brahmin, brigand leader, had led a bloody uprising against the British. It was obvious that there was rumbling in the paradise, and the public disaffection was simmering against alien rule. But it was not these recent incidents alone that Sir Temple narrated at length to Lytton. Instead, he presented a historical sweep of the region and its people since the eventful year of 1818, when the British had managed to snuff out the mighty Maratha Empire under the Peshwas. It is commonly said, wrote Temple, that it was the Mohammedans whom the British displaced as rulers in India. This is true only in a restricted sense. It would be nearer the truth to say that it was the Marathas or Maharathas in the main whom we displaced. Given the expanse and influence of Maratha rule across India by 1818, the observation was accurate. Unlike the Sikhs, whose fighting spirit was vanquished and who somehow forgot the ignominy of defeat following the Second Anglo-Sikh War of 1848-49, the thorn of the 1818 debacle stuck in the flesh of self-respecting Marathas. And more so, as Sir Temple elucidated, in the community of Chitpavan Brahmins of the region. But who were these Chitpavans who sent such shivers down the spine of the mighty British Empire? Mythical accounts of the origins of Chitpavan Brahmins can be traced back to Parshuram, a saint considered an incarnation of Lord Vishnu. Their fair complexion, light eyes, and their large settlements along the western coast of India, particularly Ratnagiri, suggest that they may have come from Iran to Maharashtra by sea. Organized into 14 patrilineal groups or gotras, they had no formal caste leadership or guidelines for conducting their social lives, but instead owed a loose allegiance to their religious pontiff, the Shankaracharya or Sankeshwar. From the hilly and economically depressed Konkan strip along the western coast, where they initially settled, earning them the title of Konkanastha Brahmins, the Chitpavans, who accounted for nearly 20% of the Maharashtrian Brahmin population as per the 1901 census, migrated eastwards towards the Desh or mainland. Here they were up against their fellow castmates, the Deshastha Brahmins, who outnumbered them and composed the traditional elite of the region. From being cultivators, priests, and petty traders in their home strip of the Konkan, the newly arrived Chitpavans soon became administrators, diplomats, and even martial soldiers. They quickly appropriated all the skills needed to rise up the political and economical ladder and left the Dashasthas to occupy lower positions in administration or continue as priests. This preeminence of Chitpavan Brahmins in administration was firmly rooted following Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaja's death in 1680 and the establishment of the Peshwa rule by the early 18th century. The Peshwas, prime ministers of Shivaji Maharaja's descendants, were Chitpavan Brahmins themselves. They became the de facto political authority after Shivaji, while his descendants and grandson Shahu Maharaj occupied the ancestral throne at Satara. From the appointment of Balaji Vishwanath Bhatt as the Peshwa in 1713, the Chitpavans found their way into all the departments of government. They followed the Maratha princess everywhere from Baroda, Indore and Sangli to Miraj and Jamkhandi. The Peshwa generously rewarded eminent Chitpavans with large grants of land. From princes to sardars, administrators, statesmen, diplomats to being landlords, bankers, merchants and commanders of the mighty Peshwa army, it was a golden era in Chitpavan history. However, all this changed dramatically and abruptly after 1818. The British conquest destroyed the patronage of old ruling classes and stripped the Chitpavans of their hereditary advantages. The new system of administrative service that the Britishers introduced necessitated new skills. Yet it was the ever-adaptive Chitpavan Brahmin who reinvented himself even under the biggest challenge to his monopoly by becoming the first of the community to benefit in large numbers from colonial education, thus taking up civil service positions. The key post in the Bombay services was that of a Mamlatdar, that is, a revenue collector, and Brahmins, mostly Chitpavans, occupied nearly 3/4 of the positions in this grade. The Public Service Commission found that in the Bombay Presidency, 41.25% of the deputy collectors were Brahmins. By 1886, 33 of the 104 subordinate judges in the presidency were Chitpavans. The reason that Chitpavans benefited so extensively under British rule was explained by Sir Temple in his letter to Lytton, stating the preeminent position is won not by favor but by force of merit. What then, one wonders, embittered a community that depends so much upon government service for its livelihood? Sir Temple summed his succinctly in his letter to Lytton, where he spoke of the Maharashtrian Brahmins' nostalgia for their former military and political glory over vast parts of the country. The subsequent fall from grace stirred a potent sentiment of resentment against the British since the 1820s itself. The Chitpavan tribe, explained Temple, are inspired with national sentiment and with an ambition bounded only with the bounds of India itself. The true Chitpavan unites the hardihood and energy of a martial commander with all address and skill of a diplomat. Nothing that we do now by way of education, emolument or advancement in the public service at all satisfies the Chitpavans. Education does indeed, in some respect, draw them towards us. They reflect on many large matters solely through our language. They learn to use our modes of thought and to disuse their own. On the other hand, education is certainly making their minds restless. They will never be satisfied till they regain their ascendancy in the country as they had it during the last century. Never have I known in India a national and political ambition so continuous, so enduring, so far-reaching, so utterly impossible for us to satisfy as that of the Brahmins of Western India, especially the dominant section of the concursed Brahmins above described. That many of Maharashtrians prominent writers, educationists, social reformers, historians, civil servants, lawyers and journalists, from Mahadev Govind Ranade, Bal Gangadhar Tilak to Vishnu Shastri, Krishna Shastri Chiplunkar, Ganesh Agarkar and Gopalakrishna Gokhale were Chitpavan Brahmins fiercely opposed to British rule, reinforced Sir Temple's analysis. It was in such a family of nationalistic Chitpavan Brahmins that Vinayak Damodar Savarkar was born in 1883.